Okay, great. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Shambhala Online's live weekly Dharma gatherings. My name is Adriana DeFazio. I'm our host for this evening's talk. So tonight's talk is by Tuyet Cullen, titled Dissolving Cultural Norms of Shame as an Act of Resilience. We'll start off with a guided meditation, a talk by Tuyet, and then a Q&A discussion at the end. A little bit about our teacher. Tuyet Cullen has been in public education for 15 years in Madison, Wisconsin. Her path as a meditator and her path as a teacher are one and the same. Meditation has given her space to be present and compassionate with her students and coworkers, and teaching has given her an understanding of the spaciousness of the human heart. Mining these experiences has given her the tools to constantly build, tear down, and build again a container in her classroom where students feel seen for who they are and a little bit more confident in taking risks. Her path continues to support constant reflection and adjusting of her craft as a teacher, especially in how she works with children who feel unrepresented in the public institution of education. She's a member of the core mindfulness team for the Madison Metropolitan School District, where she provides experiences for teachers to cultivate and sustain a mindfulness practice. She also currently serves as a director of practice and education for the Madison Shambhala Center. So before we get started, and Tuyet leads us through our meditation and talk, I just want to clarify for the Q&A portion, we'll be facilitating questions via the raise hand feature on Zoom via the chat sidebar. If you're selected for a question, then you'll be spotlighted to ask your question on screen. Tonight's session will be recorded, so if you prefer not to be seen, please take off your camera feature. And then also please note that you will be recorded when asking the question. And tonight's recording will be accessed tomorrow in your My Programs tab on your Shambhala Online account. So without further ado, I'm going to hand off the rest of the evening to our teacher, Tuyet. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Adriana. Hello, everyone. It is wonderful to be here with you. We'll first start with a sitting practice, and I'll be giving some light guided instruction during that practice. So the first kind of couple moments here, you just kind of want to kind of shake out the body a little bit, bring yourself back to any sensations you're having, whether it's aches, whether it's a little bit of tension, kind of rolling out those particular places. And the active meditation is about dropping into the present moment and kind of a bridge for getting us to that connection to the present moment is noticing the sensations in our body. So the placement of our posture, where we may be holding joy, where we may be holding stress, all of those are opportunities to connect to the present moment as we connect to the sensations of the body. So if you're sitting in a chair, you want to make sure that you are sitting on the edge of the chair with an upright posture. Knees are bent at a 90-degree angle. If you're sitting in a cushion, you want to kind of wiggle perhaps a little and make sure that your body weight is evenly distributed across your sitting bones. And then your hands are lightly resting on your thighs. And all of us have a different geography, so wherever your hands go are exactly where they're supposed to go on your legs. Your shoulders are lowered. Your chin is slightly tucked in. And your eyes are going to be looking forward and kind of in a, you're not trying to focus on anything. You're not trying to purposely look at anything. Your gaze is soft and looking forward. And as we take our seat in our meditation posture, that's the gathering of the physical sensations and connecting back to our body. And then we direct our focus and we direct our attention to the natural way that our body breathes. We don't want to change anything. We don't want to have our attention make it feel like we have to breathe faster or breathe slower. We just want to connect to the natural way that our body breathes. And inevitably, our mind is going to wander. It's going to attach to a storyline, it's going to attach to an emotion, it's going to think about something that we're about to do or something that we already did. It's going to kind of distract itself. When we notice that moment, we become aware of that moment, we create a little space and label it thinking and let it dissolve, let it float away. And then we kindly and compassionately bring ourselves back to our breath. At any moment, if you need to drop the practice and then re engage with it, come back to taking your seat, come back to feeling your heart, come back to feeling your posture. A fresh start is always available. And then re engaging in the posture, connecting to our breathing. We'll return to our Zoom room together. So I'm honored to be sharing tonight, sharing the experiences that I've had over the years of my meditation practice and the path that I've taken. I first came to meditation when I started teaching in 2004. And like many people that come to meditation, it was about stress relief. It was also very much about making the 5-year mark in my teaching career. There's many statistics out there that talk about teachers that begin their career, they sometimes don't last past that 5th year. And I was very determined that I was going to last at least 5 years. So I turned to meditation as a process as a tool to use to get to that landmark. And then as I continued to have my experiences with meditation deepen and became and had stronger experiential understanding of what meditation is, it definitely turned into an idea that there's a fundamental aspect of stress relief and self-care, the fundamental aspect of getting to know myself. Meditation offered me the skills and the ability to get to know myself better, to get to understand myself. The trends that I have in anger, the trends that I have in fear, the trends that I have in sadness, the trends that I have in happiness, and all of the things in between. So my meditation practice definitely strengthened my ability to understand who I am. And this process of getting an understanding of who I am is where my path with shame and fear, that was the starting point. Because getting to understand who I am definitely came to understand, being able to understand my relationship with shame was a requirement before I could fully understand who I am. And getting to know myself absolutely required getting to know my community, getting to know the culture I grew up in, getting to know the places that I spent my time, the people around me. The country of the United States has a particularly intense relationship with shame. There are systems of oppression within our country that very much gain their power from the tools of shame. In my experience, there is a very set definition of what American is. And that created an entry point for shame into my life. We all have different entry points. We all have entry points for shame that are based on various aspects of who we are as an individual. My particular entry points are based in my relationship with understanding my place as a woman of color in the world, growing up biracial in a small town in Wisconsin, being born soon after the war in Vietnam, having a father from Vietnam and a mother that's white American. These are definitely entry points for shame in my life because of the way that American is defined, the way that success is defined, the way that beauty, the way that intelligence are defined. There's this experience that I think many people have, that if you don't meet an idea of what is, quote, normal, there's this automatic fail that is attached to us, that is attached to me. And these aren't through purposeful, mean actions. This is a major system that is on a cultural, societal level that we as individuals then tap into and are a part of. Individuals that may or may not actually individuals that actually meet these ideas of what is, quote, normal, what is, quote, American, that in itself is also an entry point for shame in being a definition that is so external. A person may meet a definition of what is, quote, normal and what is, quote, American. And it is a definition that is heavily based on other people's perspectives of that person. And that is a major entry point for shame. There is a swift and fast fall from a pedestal that is possible. And that becomes that entry point for shame. A major tool of these systems that hurt and can oppress and build shame is a binary system. Good, bad, happy, sad, us, them, wrong, right, male, female. There's a multitude of binaries, and binaries are a source of control, and that control is steeped in shame. If you're not in that good side of the binary, there's again an automatic sense of failure. And that sense of failure, that feeling of failure, is what builds and builds and builds and can cause an overarching experience of shame. Now, before in my path and in my practice and over the last several years of really working with understanding who I am, there was these important preparation steps before diving into this act of getting to know where shame lives and breathes in my body. And it was first an initial understanding of what fear is and how fear is a part of my life, part of my personality, part of my actions, part of my decisions. It was an extremely important part of my path to understand fear and then have that lead to an understanding of shame. Now, shame and fear, they're extremely intertwined. They grow in the similar ground. They can be activated by similar events. They are sometimes physically experienced the same way. They are definitely close relatives. From what I experienced, there was this important part of being able to burn off the layer of fear that I held in my life before I could even start to understand my shame. That layer of fear was all about, I was so scared of people finding out about these things that I was ashamed of, that I couldn't even admit that those things existed. So my relationship with fear, that was the first relationship I really started to cultivate, understanding where it is, understanding where it is experienced, understanding the physical sensations that arise when I'm in a moment of fear. That was the beginning piece. And being able to understand my trends was then an important part of being able to understand shame. And that was my mindfulness practice. My mindfulness practice was the key component of that being a possibility in my life. Our practice can give us more space when we are in moments of fear and in moments of shame. There are important places where fear and shame differ. And at first, everything was just about fear. And then when I slowly became to start to understand the place that shame entered and was a part, it was hard to understand the ebb and flow of these two very strong emotions. And something that helped me understand this was a metaphor about vitamins. Fear are the water-soluble vitamins, and shame are the fat-soluble vitamins. And fear is the water-soluble vitamins because our body can independently process them. If we take too much of vitamin C or vitamin D, our body can naturally process that and take care of us. Shame are the fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin E or vitamin A, and our body actually can store them. If we take too much of them, our body needs help purging them so that it doesn't hurt us. And that's that's to me this major difference between the way that we respond to shame and the way that we respond to fear, the way we dissolve them. So if I'm caught in the throes of fear, a meditation session can slow me down, can give me space and awareness to dissolve that fear. If I'm caught in the throes of shame, my meditation practice gives me an opportunity of being aware of that shame, but it's not quite enough to dissolve the shame. There is an aspect of dissolving shame that is about having a loving community, having a group of people or a person that we feel safe with and trust in order to slowly share that shame with and have them being able to receive it and kind of hold space with us. And I turn to Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. There is a quote in here that kind of explains this idea. Shame derives its power from being unspeakable. That's why it loves perfectionists. It's so easy to keep us quiet. If we cultivate enough awareness about shame to name it and speak to it, we're basically cutting it off at the knees. And that's an important aspect of dissolving shame, is being able to share and having the confidence and comfort of being able to share. There's a lot of preparation work that goes into that place of being able to share. And that preparation work is a mindfulness meditation practice. Being able to know ourselves, being able to connect to what our inherent worth is. And that's on the individual level. And that is what we bring individually to our communities. And my experiences as a public educator working in a middle school with 7th graders who are 12 years old, 13 years old, that was such an important part of being able to understand and see the shame that we were all experiencing and trying to work with individually. And if we're all working with that individually, that separation between us is a source of power for the different systems of oppression that exist. A lot of it is about a major source of that, a major push for those systems of oppression is very much about consumerism, looking outside of ourselves in order to solve things that aren't actually problems, but are created to be problems. And I see the vulnerability in children, the vulnerability children have to those messages. And that has been an important aspect of understanding my role as a practitioner of meditation, as an individual, and then as a caregiver, as a teacher for the children that I work with. Seeing them and everything that they are is like a reminder of what it is that I've gone through. And not that I ever, when I'm interacting with children, want to make it about me, but it's about an act of remembering that is a little bit of a building block for understanding where I am at this point. And the truth that children speak is such a rich source of learning. And sometimes very uncomfortable to be with. They are 13 and their truth can be very blunt, but it's always been a source of comfort. So this experience of coming to understand the way shame and fear create this interwoven cycle in my life, and a lot of the shame and fear that was built into the experiences I had were about trying to find my place in a social context, whether it was a group of my classmates, or whether it was my family, or whether it was friends, or all of the ways we interact socially with our communities, and wanting to belong. And at times, not feeling that the communities I were part of necessarily reflected me as I am, as a biracial Vietnamese American, or as I am as a shorter, rounder female, or as I am as a kind of more of an introvert. There's all these ways of belonging that sometimes reflected my experiences and sometimes didn't. And not that the world has to reflect every little thing that we have as personality, characteristics, or traits. And there is an importance of expanding our experiences in order to come across things that are more connected to who we are. And absolutely furthering my education, I went to a college in Wisconsin where the first person of color I had as a teacher was a women's studies class, or I took and that experience was beautiful because I saw people that looked like me or had names that were similar to mine. And that experience kind of was able to dissolve some of that shame that I carried with me. And the experiences I have with my seventh graders, there's an aspect of giving to them what I wasn't always, what I didn't always have access to. That act of giving to them helps dissolve some of the shame that I carry. And that's an ongoing process. Being able to burn off the fear and get to the layers of shame that are dissolved by having unconditional listening from people that I love and trust, that built a confidence. That built a confidence that I didn't even know that I didn't have. I always thought of myself as a confident person, but it was a confidence built on brittleness. It was a confidence built on arriving on the scene and saying, everybody, here I am, and you better accept me or else. It was a confidence built on over flamboyance in order to compensate for something that I felt was lacking. So there's an idea of confidence that I didn't fully understand until I continued to slow down, until I continued to touch into my inherent worth, until I continued to spend time with myself and my mind. And spending time with myself and my mind, the confidence became more even keeled, more about what is it that I can offer to others, and not necessarily, well, what is it that is owed to me? It created a beautiful, instead of a vicious cycle, it created a very loving cycle. Being listened to is a confidence builder that now allows me to listen to others, which then builds their confidence. And that compassionate cycle then continues. And being in a classroom with 30 kids, the act of listening is a challenge. Something that I built over the years was an assurance to children. I may not be able to talk to you right now, but I will, and I see you, and please give me a moment. And there's this social understanding that we both walk away where the child can feel a little more settled. And then it's also, I carry that with me, and sometimes literally have to write names on paper. But just this continued focus on, I'm going to listen, I'm going to be with the children, I'm going to support them by listening. That deep listening that I'm able to offer the world, because when I am in need of being listened to, I have that community built into my life that is able to listen to me. And deep listening is such an important part of dissolving shame. That initial preparation was an extremely important piece also. The initial preparation of settling into a practice, getting to know myself, getting to understand the ways that fear and shame operate inside of my body. That was an extremely important piece to then being able to be listened to. Everyone should feel like they have an opportunity to be heard, everyone. And at the same time, everyone has a responsibility to listen to others. And for years, I facilitated in a consensus-based organization. And that was one of the most important things to remind people, even in a consensus-based organization. Yes, the whole process of consensus is built on this idea of listening. And people are very willing to be like, yes, I have a right to be heard. I want to tell my truth. Absolutely. And then the kind of inverse was often forgotten. Yes, you have a right to be heard. You have a right to speak your truth. And then at the same time, you have a responsibility to listen to someone else's truth. And that beautiful cycle of listening and being heard, that's what we need to continue to build. It takes courage to tell our story. And it takes a practice to help build that courage. And it takes an understanding of the way shame silences us to help dissolve that shame, to then build that courage off of it. And 13-year-olds, they have a particularly challenging time. Confidence becomes something that is quite vulnerable. You know, there's this inherent confidence that children have about their place in the world, what is good or bad, what is right or wrong. There's this inherent confidence that children carry with them for such a long period of time. And then there's something that happens, and it's a unique feature of the United States, the way that puberty is experienced, the way that middle school is experienced, the way that adolescence is experienced, where there's this crippling sense of insecurity that comes over children. That is something distinct to the United States. The fragility of a mind is placed into a container. They become aware of the messages that are sent. And that awareness is a shock to the system. And I see children going through that. And as an adult in their life, it is so important it's important to help them navigate this, to understand that it exists, and then how to stand in a place in their life where they don't internalize those messages. And that I don't have a perfect answer to. I'm still trying every day. And especially in a time where the messages being sent by the events in our world really can hit a vulnerable place, really can hit a place of safety and kind of put cracks into that sense of safety. I think the idea of this being a process is very important to kind of hold at the forefront of our mind. This is a process of listening, a process of dissolving, and a process of getting to know ourselves and taking steps to offer opportunities to feel our inherent worth. And an aspect of that is often not talking about it directly. Sometimes saying, well, I'm going to sit here and feel my inherent worth, or I want you to feel your inherent worth, or why don't you feel your inherent worth? Like there's this awkwardness that's introduced in having a conversation like that. And it's more about creating the circumstances, creating the environment for those opportunities, and creating the environment, and then trusting that the individual that's in the environment, they know what to do. We know what to do at the heart of things. And the environment is a major piece of being able to connect to our inherent worth. And there's purposeful action that's required to create that environment of inherent, to build inherent worth. There are purposeful actions we can, and I believe we should take in order to build those containers, whether it's containers for us, whether it's containers for children, for our family, for our community. And a lot of that is about engaging with individuals that may not often experience the sensation of being listened to. And that process is ongoing. And I feel one of the best parts of giving Dharma talks is hearing others' experiences with this idea that is centralized in the talk. And I would love to hear ideas from the participants. And for other participants that may be listening to this as a recording, I am always intrigued and interested and invite dialogue and discourse. So I invite people, if you wish, to reach out to me. My email address is mockingbird77@gmail.com. And questions and ideas and sharings, and that is, I think, an important aspect of growing. There's opportunities to learn all over the place. So I invite that in the future, and I invite right now questions from the individuals who are here. I look forward to hearing your ideas. So I turn it over to Adriana to facilitate the Q&A.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Tuyet, for that talk. If anyone has any questions, they can raise their hand via the side panel, and I'll just choose you, spotlight you, and you'll be brought onto the screen. So I actually have a question. Because you can warm up with me. Yeah, so I'm curious what you mentioned about just like the natural growth of into adulthood from adolescence that you witness in your own students, and how you see like their inherent, confidence and belief in their values and what's right and good in the world, how that sense of worthiness or sense of themselves kind of deteriorates as we grow older in some way. And I am curious what your thoughts are regarding that, and specifically to what I feel was my case. Like, it was college, really. It was like having a really strong sense of myself in high school, transitioning into college, and then especially in my postgraduate life, like feeling like I didn't really have much to offer, just because of like work experience. And also just coming from like a millennial point of view of like knowing that my generation is, labeled as privileged in some way, or entitled Um, and not to say that there isn't, and I think a lot of that was an overcompensation for myself, at least, was like knowing that there's like merit in an accumulation of experience and knowledge, and like wanting to respect that. But then that, unfortunately, like, you know, diminishing my own self-worth below like the healthy amount. Yeah. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that as you witness that with your own like students and adolescents that you work with.
I think when there's, and I don't know if this is an assumption in your postgraduate life, was that a move to a different setting?
Um, what do you mean? Like the
Like, were you still at the place where you did your undergrad?
no, just like postgraduate, as in no longer in school.
Oh, I apologize. I was thinking grad school.
That's
Um,
okay.
so I think after college, when we are finding our place in a career or whatever it is that people connect to, there's like these developmental stages that we all go through. You know, there's infanthood, there's childhood, there's adolescence, there's like that strange stage when we have independence, but we don't quite have the independence that we're going to have when we have adulthood. And college is absolutely a place where we have, there's this experience of needing to feed ourselves and organize our time, and I think that's new as an after high school experience. And then there's this exploration. There's this unspoken agreement between what poorness means as a college student versus what does being poor mean when you're outside of college. Like, college students don't make a lot of money, but it's kind of this like aspect of our experience, like that's how it's supposed to be. It's a rite of passage. And when we leave a developmental stage and enter the next stage, there is a jarring motion to it. And I think somewhere in our lives, no matter where, we're going to experience that jarring motion. I think there's a trend in our society of people experience that jarringness when they go into adolescence. But that doesn't mean that trend applies to every individual. I think everyone has it somewhere. And I think a lot of people experience it later in life because of like the social agreement we have of being what does being a high schooler mean? What does being a college student mean? And if we're fitting into that, we're meeting that social agreement. Once we leave that developmental stage, go into another one, and those social agreements don't work anymore, that could feel really uncomfortable. And then like, if you had a meditation practice at that time, I imagine your meditation practice, you're trying to use practices that had worked in this previous setting. They don't work anymore. Our meditation practice responds to what it is we're doing. And it takes time to respond. It's because we have these beautifully inlaid habits that then need to form in a different way for a different setting. And, like, I would say there was, I went to college several times. My first experience, I studied psych and women's studies, and then I got out, and it was okay. This is 99. First time I graduated college, and I just tootled about because it was a psych degree. You don't know, you have to do something afterwards. You can't do much with a bachelor's. And so there was this like inherent moment of like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do, but that was okay because that's what people with psych degrees do. There was this social norm around it. And then I went back to school and I got my teaching degree. And then I started my career as a teacher. And that was a huge jarring moment for me because everything about the way that I organized time in my life changed. I had to get up at 5:30 now. I used to get up at like 8. I had to like communicate in a different way. There's a professional language we use as teachers that I don't use in any other setting of my life. Like there was just all of these things that were different. And meditation was a way for me to find my footing again. I came to meditation in that space in my life. So the meditation practice that I built was based on that jarring experience. And, 15 years later, it's still, there are moments where it's still a jarring experience. And being able to go back to my meditation, that's what alleviates that dip in that jarring experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's very helpful. I think the the thinking of it as developmental stages and the social agreements that are associated with those stages, yeah, it's helpful to put it in context. I don't think I ever gave myself that, I guess, like credit. Not credit, but acknowledgement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are people able to chat questions if they need? If someone is interested in chatting a question, that'd be great.
That is available if anyone wants to.
Hello. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Will.
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So I really liked what you had to say about developmental stages and kind of going through different ones being a jarring experience. I'm a stay-at-home dad, and I've got a 3-year-old son, and I'm gonna, eventually have to explain to him some of these concepts as he goes through adolescence and some things. So I was kind of curious if you could speak a little bit more about, the language to that maybe some of the things that you use to explain this concept. It's very complicated to adolescents or to kids that are in the middle of something that they don't quite understand.
Yeah. Sometimes when I'm talking, it's interesting. Today I was just having a conversation with a student who most of the time when any of my students start to exhibit like what is called disruptive behavior, it's usually like there's an internal process that's going on that they just don't want to name, can't name, are resistant to naming, and it exhibits in a way that's like very like a porcupine spike, like they're putting on their bristles. And I think that is, if you are familiar with brain development, that's an absolute normal experience, those bristles. And owning that with the child, owning that, like, can you name what you're feeling inside? And it's the tone of voice that we hold. It's the way we're positioning our body. It's, are we on their level or are we over them? A lot of my students are taller than me, but the ones that are like, am I at their level, or am I holding a position of that's quote more powerful? All of that is communicated in that interaction, and the aligning myself in a space where I am calm, I'm neutral, I'm also firm, and there's a healthy way to hold a boundary, and just saying, like, can you name what it is you're feeling? Can you what is it that you're feeling? And the way we ask the question gives them permission to tell the truth. And they're going to struggle with that. Sometimes absolutely they can name it. And sometimes they're just like, no, I'm just feeling all of that. And whatever their response is, we hold it. And the challenge that I go through all the time, and I imagine parents go through all the time, is assuming that what that child is doing is wrong, assuming that it's coming from a place where they're angry, where they're frustrated, where they're being bad. And we communicate that to children. They're middle schoolers, I often say their bullshit meter is extremely talented, and they can pick up on all these indirect social cues. So as an individual that's interacting with them, owning that and then taking control of my communication through those indirect social cues, that's been the hugest piece of what I've been able to provide the children I work with. So, and giving space, like there's this idea that we have to address it right now, and we have to make sure they're doing it right now. And that rush can shut someone down, can shut a child down. Letting them know, like, yes, I'm going to give you space right now. I'm going to walk away. We are going to talk about this again, but right now I'm walking away. That gives them that sense of autonomy. And a lot of times children, and I feel especially 13-year-olds, they need to have this sense of autonomy. They need to feel like, okay, I have control over this. And telling them, like, I'm walking away because I can tell you need that. And at the same time, we're going to talk about this again. It still gives them that sense of autonomy. And the classical example of like giving a child two choices and both of the choices are ones that you're okay with. I mean, it's amazing how well that works when I'm interacting with a kid that's having high emotions. Like, okay, you can sit here or you can sit here, but I need you to sit. And they're just like, ah! And then something happens and they feel like they've made a choice and they sit down. So yeah, does that feel like I was able to answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much. That was great.
Okay, thank you. Good luck.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions? Right. Well, if not, we can turn to the announcements.
Hi, everyone. So thank you for joining us for tonight's online Dharma gathering. Again, tonight's talk will be recorded. So if you'd like to view this again, it'll be posted in your My Programs tab on your Shambhala online account tomorrow. Next week, we have another Dharma gathering with Karma Lodro Gendon from Gampo Abbey for a talk titled Sonam, Karma, Merit, and Privilege. You can find more details via shambhalaonline.org/Dharma gathering. I'm also going to post it in the chat box. Great. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Tuyet. Tuyet, are there any last words you'd like to share with the group before we sign off?
Just the sincere invitation for future discourse. If something arises at a later time that you would like to have more of a dialogue about, please, I welcome you to reach out to me, mockingbird77@gmail.com. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Tuyet. Thanks, everyone. See you next week.
Good night.